Welcome everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Geek Topia. I'm your host, Barry. I'm joined today by my co-host, Samuel.
Thank you kindly, good sir. Just to give a forewarning of spoilers and of uncomfortable content, so put on a happy face as we send in the clowns for our latest discussion today on one of the biggest films of 2019, Joker.
Yeah, Joker. What can we say on this film? It was released on October the 4th last year. I believe you've already seen this film, around 29, 30 times, I think?
Okay, so on the record, I saw it 14 times at the cinema. Collectively, I have seen it 31 times on VOD, Blu-ray, but that doesn't include, watching the individual scenes.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say I haven't seen it anywhere near that amount of times. I've actually seen this film, I think, 5 times, and Joker was actually one of my favourite movies of 2019. I'll be honest, it's a movie I was pretty apprehensive about. When it was announced there was going to be essentially a Joker origin story, live action, I thought, at the end of the day, it's a very risky move. It's, the Joker's such an iconic and interesting villain, and one of the reasons he's such an interesting character is that his backstory is very much shrouded in mystery. So actually giving him a backstory in a way of kind of, how do I say it, tarnishing the mythos almost. Now obviously we had Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, which is widely regarded as being like the definitive Joker story, certainly one of the best graphic novels out there. What was your thoughts when this film was actually announced?
Well, if I recall, the origin story was supposed to be around Jared Leto's depiction of Joker. However, I think the reception to Suicide Squad didn't go down well. I know Todd Phillips, I think we'll need to talk more about his background later. So he came about, he said some statement, let's have a real budget and let's make a real effing movie and let's call it Joker. So at first, I know Martin Scorsese was tagged on Twitter for being the creator. Leonardo DiCaprio was supposed to be the Joker as well. And then it changed into something completely different. Scorsese eventually dropped out. Phillips took over and, of course, ended up casting Joaquin Phoenix. Now, I have to admit, I was, skeptical on the idea of an origin story. I think anyone would do so. Knowing that it is Joaquin Phoenix, I think did give some hope. That said, because of Todd Phillips' career, the skepticism unfortunately dropped down again.
Yeah, Todd Phillips is obviously a director most notable for comedy. This is the guy that directed the Hangover trilogy, and I thought it was a really odd choice. Getting someone like Todd Phillips to helm this film. I was apprehensive from the get-go. I love the Joker. The Joker is my favourite villain in all of pop culture. Obviously, he's Batman, hands down the most iconic Batman villain. And I think, really, there's only one villain out there, probably in the history of pop culture, that is as iconic as the Joker. And that's probably Darth Vader from Star Wars.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's based on a more original character. And if you think the amount of times that the Joker has been depicted in all different forms of mediums, whether it be cinema, whether it be television, whether it be video games as well, it's incredible, and each actor brings something completely different.
Yeah, this character's been around for like 80 years now. It was the Joker's 80th anniversary this year. It's crazy to think this character has actually survived for as long as this. But the fact that Martin Scorsese was attached to it, Scorsese he's one of the best directors of all time, as far as I'm concerned. I think Scorsese's a hell of a director. The fact that he was attached to it gave me some hope. Now, as we know, as this film went into production, Scorsese did actually distance himself from the project, but I think it's fair to say that his fingerprints are very much all over this movie.
And that in itself is one of the, I think is one of the biggest criticisms towards this film, which, to be honest, I do understand. We did talk about this, there's a lot of elements of Taxi Driver. The biggest culprit or the biggest influence is clearly the king of comedy as well. You also have the Man Who Laughed, as well as Charlie Chaplin, whether it be Arthur Fleck's, was it his Carnival, his clown, the name of his clown, as well as Smile, the song that's being used, as well as Modern Times. So it borrows a lot And some of it is very obvious. So some people are like, well, that's blatantly stealing it. We came to a different conclusion.
Well, I think at the end of the day, you could say it's ripping things off. You could also say, to me, this film was very much kind of a love letter. It was a love letter to cinema of the 70s and 80s. And there's definite shades, there's undeniably shades of some of Scorsese's earlier works, most notably Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. This movie is almost kind of a modern day Taxi Driver with kind of putting... This is what I love about this film, though, is that it essentially, at its core, it's a comic book movie, but it's a film that actually stands on its own 2 feet.
Oh, definitely.
We're in this era now where we've got these huge comic book universes and so forth. You've got the DCEU, you've got the MCU. This is a film that stands on its own 2 feet. It's not handcuffed to anything else. It's a standalone story, almost an Elseworld tale, if you will. This is the thing. To me, there's no one definitive version of the Joker. 80 years this character has been around. Every storyteller has their own version of this character. I think, there was a lot of attention to detail that went into this film. We're going to get onto the casting in a minute. But this movie, let's just talk about the opening logo. It actually uses the old Warner Brothers logo that has not been used in years, since the 80s, I believe.
And then not to mention as well, when it comes to the opening credits of Warner Brothers Presents a Bron Entertainment production, it's again in that beautiful font that you would find from some of those more classical Hollywood films. And the idea is to create the illusion that this is a film that would have come out in the early 80s, which of course is, I think the main culprit is that night is set in 1981, which has its relevance in many ways. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later with the fun facts. So it is a film that it's not explicit in when it's set. However, if you didn't necessarily know, you could have believed that it was a film that came out in a very different time.
It's just wonderfully filmed. It's really is wonderfully filmed. It's each shot is perfectly framed, and the use of lighting in each scene as well. It is very much, as I say, a love letter to cinema of that time. Joaquin Phoenix, tremendous actor, fantastic actor, and the moment he was cast, my hopes for this film actually went up. And then obviously, let's talk about the transformation. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix is very much a method actor. This is a guy that takes acting very seriously. He lost a whopping 52 pounds.
See, the scary thing, and the one thing you have to admire, is that even Todd Phillips has pointed out, he's not necessarily technically method, but his intensity is to the same degree as that of a method actor. So it is absolutely unbelievable. And as you said, the transformation over 52. We like to make a big fuss about this, but it is unpleasant to look at. I mean, it's not necessarily an insult, but it's just like it really adds to this such a character. I know Joaquin wanted him to be a little larger, if you like. However, having him in this very minimal form, I think definitely adds to the setting, if you like.
Yeah, Joaquin went into this film, right? Okay, basically, he wasn't trying to emulate any other actor playing this role. We know we had Cesar Romero from the 60s, we have Jack Nicholson in 89, Heath Ledger 2008, and of course Jared Leto, which probably isn't worth talking about his iteration personally, but Joaquin Phoenix went in there, not emulating any of these. He wanted to create his own Joker. And obviously, this movie is he lost 52 pounds, which isn't actually far off what Christian Bale lost for The Machinist, the 2004 film, in which he looked almost skeletal in that movie. The performance in this movie, Joaquin Phoenix deservedly got the Oscar for this film, without a doubt.
I know you may not necessarily agree with this. I don't necessarily think it is his best performance. I think films like The Master or You Were Never Really Here, I think really encapsulate some more of his absolute intensity and admiration. He won the Cannes Award for Best Actor for You Were Never Really Here.
Yeah.
However, and this is a strong however, he finally got an Oscar. You get what you deserve.
Yeah, well, I think an Oscar was pretty much long overdue for Joaquin Phoenix. It certainly is one of his greatest performances. People say, like, who's your favourite Joker? And obviously a lot of people say Ledger. I still love Jack Nicholson because he perfectly fit the film that he was in. I struggle to compare. I can't really compare them because the difference is with The Dark Knight, 2008, The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger was a villain in that film. With this movie, he is the character of the movie.
Yeah.
We are following Arthur Fleck from start to finish, so he's giving a hell of a lot more screen time, etc. And this is the kind of movie, had his performance not have been so absorbing and engaging, this film could have potentially fell flat.
Oh, in multiple ways. That's the beauty, is, considering of the diversity of... we talked about this previously before, or in that, Cesar Romero the Clown, Nicholson the Gangster... I think some people consider Mark Hamill as the Joker, but then again, that's if you include voice actors. Joaquin's performance, though, there are elements of it that are truly unsettling, and I think particularly with the condition that his character is given as well, it definitely adds more of a sympathy element, and it adds a cruel irony, because the fact of he is the comedian.
He's a guy that genuinely... or at least we'll get onto this in a little while, but he's clearly, it's presented that he's a guy that's just hard done by with life. You really can't help but feel for him. He's a very sympathetic character. You can really kind of relate to him to a degree. This is a guy that just nothing's going right for him, and clearly this movie's very bleak. Obviously, this film is very much a depiction. We're not going to go into this too much, but it's a depiction of mental illness. It's a depiction of depression, if you will, somebody that is basically thrown over the edge, etc. But let's before we get onto that, the success of this film. This movie was made on a budget, excluding marketing. I believe the budget was around about $55 million, and this movie actually made just over $1 billion at the box office.
It made about $1 billion and just over 74 million. Now, if you do need to consider the controversy and the polarization of this film. I think we won't talk too much about the politics on this. However, it's unbelievable that for such a long time, for Good Mums, people were going absolutely crazy over this film, that it might inspire, or it's incendiary, that it might inspire violence, which is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, like, oh God, I thought we were past this. However, I think this shows an example of the division. The Guardian had two reviews. Some reviewed it at the Venice Film Festival. They gave it 5 stars, and then when the film was finally released, another film critic gave it 2 stars. So, same paper, 2 different reviews. That's just a very, very small sample of how controversial this was. However, there's no such thing as bad press. My goodness, the coverage this film has had. Talk about free press.
Yeah, it's the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. I will be honest, I didn't actually see that coming. I thought this film actually had a lot of potential to do well at the box office. I kind of expected it to probably make at least between 600 to 700 mil, which is still a huge amount of profit. That's still a massive success. This film it's the only R-rated film actually to actually make $1 billion at the box office. Now, if it wasn't about the Joker, let's just say that this is a movie about, let's just say the character of Arthur Fleck isn't presented as the Joker or so forth, would this film have done as well?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, my father, when he went to see it, he really, really liked it. And he said there were parts of it that reminded him of Falling Down, the Joel Schumacher film. Yeah. And there are some similarities. No, I don't think it would have been as successful. I think it would have been one of those films that you've probably seen at the art house, or even a mainstream film that pretty much almost no one would see.
Yeah, it's a movie that certainly stands out from the other kind of comic book movies out. That's the thing with this movie. I feel like you can actually go into this film, you've never read a DC comic book in your life, and you can probably, enjoy might be the strong word, because I know some people that really appreciated this film from a filmmaking perspective, but they found it too bleak and too depressing. I know some people that really kind of loved the film, but at the same time, they wouldn't return to it due to the subject matter. Now let's get on another little piece of casting in this. I remember Alec Baldwin was actually attached to this. Alec Baldwin was going to play Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father. He actually pulled out of the movie. I'm not sure as to why. But yeah, this is essentially, at its core, it's kind of a Batman movie without Batman.
But it's good that they
It's a
at
big
least
risk.
included it. They at least included the Wayne family to a point, and I think that in itself is a crucial element as well. Then again, you could argue, well, if they weren't there, then they wouldn't. Then it wouldn't really be a DC film.
No, I mean that's another interesting little fact as well. Is that the DC logo, which typically, of course, like Marvel, the DC logo comes up at the start of each film. It actually doesn't appear until the end credits, until the end of the movie.
Yeah.
In this movie, and this film, from what I know, Warner Brothers have actually stated they would actually like to make, and the plan is to make more of these kind of films. Now, origin stories, I'm presuming. That they're going to kind of follow in these standalone stories, which I'm kind of excited for, but I don't know if any of these stories would be able to repeat the success that Joker's had.
No, it wouldn't, because I said because of the controversy that surrounded this film and the sort of the irrational hysteria. What was interesting actually is that I know some people who argued, I think, to go into spoilers, because of what happens to the Wayne family, and because Bruce Wayne is just a kid. This isn't necessarily a spoiler because it's in the trailer. People said, well, there's no Batman, so what's the point of there being a Joker? To me, that's the point. If you were to reflect this in reality, the idea is that this is a film that is depressing, it is cynical, and there is a grounded sense of realism. And the idea is that there isn't a good guy. There isn't the idea that there's someone with a heart of gold flying around in the streets beating up these thugs, and that actually the more unscrupulous, villainous, repressed individuals like Arthur Fleck and this transformation with the Joker are more prominent. And I think that is something that is something that does scare some people, but
yeah, I mean, let's quickly say as well, Robert De Niro's in this film. Robert De Niro is an actor that needs no introduction whatsoever. I believe he's actually worked on 9. His 9th Scorsese film was of last year, The Irishman.
There's a funny joke with that, actually.
Yeah, but the score. Let's talk about the score, which also got an Oscar.
Hilda Guardanatia's score. Yeah, my apologies for saying that wrong. Tell you what, if you were to give a score rating, anything that I would say is 11 out of 10 is Phoenix's performance as well as Hilda's score. It is harrowing. It is haunting. There is a real beauty in its melancholy. Like I think the most beautiful example is in the bathroom dance, and this scene is incredible because it was completely improvised. In this screenplay, it's supposed to be that he goes to the bathroom and he washes the makeup off in complete disgust. Instead, Phoenix improvises it, and then the cello, and it's just this rising up. I think that's what the score does. It helps to bring out this contempt, this loathing, this sort of surrounding the society. Yeah. And there's that one shot in particular when he's coming out of the underpass with the cops. And again, it's the score that really resembles that this is a society that is decaying, and this is how it all comes crashing down and burning.
The dance scene, the music, the score complements this film perfectly. That scene in the bathroom, there's something almost darkly beautiful about it. And also, it must be said that that scene itself is kind of the transformation.
Oh, yeah.
He's just killed the guys, and it's like the Joker is born, to a degree.
And that in itself, and what's fascinating is that, that was completely improvised. I think that was not intended. So that, as you said, it's a beautiful starting point. And you just think, what else could come, particularly if you're not familiar with any of this? Yeah.
With this movie, obviously, there's some brutality to it, but at the end of the day, it's not a film that dwells on it. It's not a movie that relies heavily on it. I feel like it's there for the storytelling purpose.
Definitely, it is far more of a character study, and that in itself, I think, is a real beauty. And I think that in itself runs a risk of it being an origin story. But I think that's the key word. It's an origin story. Going back to what you said with Robert De Niro, I think that was a stroke of genius of casting, because it was, we talked about, with the King of Comedy. So to have him back in this sort of role is superb. I mean, when he first comes out, in that blue suit, and he does that little dance. It is a beautifully done piece. Phillips clearly knows what he's doing in terms of representing the king of comedy.
Yeah, I mean, there's one moment. We'll talk about like a few of the scenes now. Not too many, because obviously, I mean, the film's just over 2 hours. There's a lot to talk about. But one of the highlight scenes for me that really kind of had a little bit of an emotional impact on me is when he's watching TV with his mother, and then we see him in the studio meeting Murray, and then we realise it's just kind of a fantasy. He's sitting there watching the TV, and obviously he hasn't got a father figure in his life, and Murray says, "I'd love to have a kid like you," and they hug. It's a really emotional and tragic little moment.
It is when I think if you were to take this film on face value, and I think when you start pulling it apart, maybe this is a result of watching it too many times. I think that narrator element, I think we'll need to talk about very shortly. However, that scene in itself, if you were to take on face value...
Oh, I'm talking about upon first viewing.
Oh, it's beautifully done. And no, the line, it just says, you see all the lights and the audience would give it up to have a kid like you, as you say. And the score, when you have a tinge of the score as well, it is heartbreaking, because I think we've all had that moment of, wanting that sort of sense of love and compassion, and that is a scene that has resonated with a lot of people. Being more compassionate and being more patient with every person in existence.
I really feel for him. Obviously, one of the early scenes in the film where he's doing the sign swinging, and he gets his sign stolen, and this is what kind of kicks the movie off, actually. And he chases him, and he gets beaten up. He gets pounced upon, and he's just lying there. And again, the score to complement the scene. It's just a heart. You really feel for this guy right from the get go. I mean, and obviously the scenes with his psychiatrist as well. And there's a particular joke that you might have to remind me. It's something to do with sense. There's a joke that he says during the film.
I just heard my death makes more sense than my life.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way he spells sense is like coins.
Yeah.
Is like the American currency. So on the one hand, okay, maybe there is a comical side to it. However, it is heartbreaking. I mean, I remember when I saw it with someone. I think it was the first session with the psychiatrist, and they came to me. They came over to me. And they said, "This is really harrowing and hard going," and you think this is just the start of the film. That's just one of the heartbreaking moments. I wouldn't even say that's the most upsetting part. In fact, I think there's one particular scene. I think there's a couple of scenes. I think I knew some people said they can watch more of it. Yeah,
I mean, you really felt again with the laugh disorder that he has on the bus, and he starts laughing. He's just trying to make that little kid laugh, and he starts laughing himself, which is done through nerves, anxiety, if you will, and. The woman kind of has a going for it, and it kind of goes later on in the movie when he's on the train, and there's them three guys pestering that woman, and he's sitting there laughing. It's a really uncomfortable to watch scene.
Oh, yeah, no.
And they start bullying him and start laying into him, and that's finally when
he snaps. That's one way to put it.
Yeah, that whole scene was pretty hard to watch. It's just really well made though. I just found it to be a really absorbing character study.
Definitely, and I think that in itself, adds to the sense of reality. And I know there was some talks about there being social commentary. I dismiss that. I think there's enough for it to be seen as a cautionary tale. There's enough for it to resonate with some people, or to sort of get under the skin of people. And with the bit with the subway, I know that was a scene that got into shook a lot of people. I'm thinking, well, depiction is not necessarily endorsement. It's shocking. All the violence in this film is shocking. It's supposed to provoke a negative reaction. I think it'd be kind of concerning if you saw a shooting like that and be like, nice, because I've never seen anyone who's reacted like that.
No. I mean, one of the other scenes because in this film he develops a relationship, if you will, with a neighbour of his. We're gonna follow through with this shortly, and he tries he fight, because essentially at its core this is really kind of a film about a man trying to find his place in the world. A man's kind of struggling with his own identity. Obviously, he looks after his mother. And obviously he doesn't know who his father is, but obviously there's spoilers here. We apparently learn that apparently Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne, Batman, who obviously Bruce Wayne will go on to become Batman, is possibly his father. Now, Thomas Wayne in this movie... Now, Thomas Wayne was very much a good man. You know, I've been reading Batman comics for years now, and in this movie, he was presented as more antagonistic.
Oh, definitely. There was definitely more of a corrupted, capitalistic vibe with him as well. I remember in one of the interviews, he was talking about, I don't know why these people are so angry. I'm trying to help them. I know some people draw comparisons with real life politicians, but yeah, we don't need to go into that. There is one charming moment, if you like. Well, charm's not the right word. Is when he's having the interview after the shooting, and he says, I didn't know them personally, but like all members of the Wayne Company, past or present, they're family. He's a real politician. He knows exactly what to say.
Yeah, and he actually says that these people are cowards, they're clowns.
Which
and again,
is
the kind of thing. Now, I was watching this, and I was actually thinking to myself that that's the kind of thing Thomas Wayne would never come out with. Thomas Wayne would never say such a thing. Now, bearing in mind, I realise this is a different iteration, etc., but it also made me wonder about certain things with regards to this movie. But yeah, he's quite antagonistic, and the moment, for example, the moment where we find out that, Joaquin Phoenix, Arthur Fleck, actually finds out that... what was it? Where he finds out that he was abused?
Yeah, he was adopted. He was initially abandoned, and that Penny Fleck, his supposed mother, actually had a boyfriend who was extremely abusive. That is a scene that really got into some people's skins, and it really upset a lot of people. I think because of the sense of reality to it, because I think that is a part of thing that got into some people's skins with, that people who do bad things are not necessarily born evil. They are created of such through neglect and abuse. And I think this is why, it particularly this scene and another scene that happens later on, really upset people, because it felt so grounded, particularly with some of the photos that you see as well. They're brief, however, it's enough to make you go...
Well, another big turning point in the movie, a moment that we kind of realise there's absolutely no going back for him now, is when he kills his mother.
Yeah, that's the that in itself.
And the line that he says.
Oh, I used to think that. Do you know what I find really funny? I used to think that my life was a tragedy, but now I realise it's a fucking comedy. And I knew someone who walked out of that. They couldn't watch it. The idea of was it matricide, I think it's called?
Yeah.
However, that is the first true sin of his descent into becoming this madman. I think there was one scene beforehand with his quote-unquote girlfriend that was, I think, the final snap for him.
Yeah. That was... this movie throws a lot of gut punches. Let's talk about... let's quickly say about Joaquin Phoenix, all right? Because you said, Leonardo DiCaprio. I couldn't envision that.
No.
I really like Leonardo DiCaprio as an actor. I respect him as an actor, but I think the casting, Joaquin Phoenix, is just perfect. This is a guy that... I'm not sure if there's a lot of people realise, but originally, he was in line to be Batman. He was a guy that was actually considered to play Batman. This is back before Batman Begins, 2005, in, pronounce his name, Darren Aronofsky?
Darren Aronofsky, I believe it is. So it's, the gentleman who brought us Pi, Requiem for a Dream, and eventually Black Swan. So
and of course, more recently, Mother. Which, entirely different podcast. Mother, yeah. Joaquin Phoenix just absolutely nailed this role. Let's just quickly talk about the... Let's go into the ending. Let's kind of go and what we took away from the ending. Now, to me, right, The Killing Joke, when Alan Moore wrote The Killing Joke, it was a big risk. It was a big move. There'd never really been an origin story to the Joker before, okay? The Killing Joke, it was very critically acclaimed, etc. We're given this backstory. He's a failed comedian. He turns to a life of crime to try and support his pregnant wife, etc. But then we find out later on in the book, he actually says, when people ask me about my history, I prefer it to be multiple choice, heavily implying that the whole story he's given us about the failed comedian may actually be fabricated. Now, with this movie, there were definite echoes of The Killing Joke.
Oh, definitely.
At the end.
Well, not just aside from the failed comedian element. And I think that in itself, I think, if you were to take away and revisit the film, you do realise, oh gosh. The problem is, I think one of the biggest giveaways is Todd Phillips. He actually, in an interview, he said that the only genuine laugh in the film was at the end. So when he's with another psychiatrist and he's just laughing, I'm just thinking of a joke. And it was on the second viewing, I went, oh God, I suckered into it. I suckered into this story of self-pity.
This is the thing. The Joker, whatever his name may be, has proved to be an unreliable narrator. We don't actually know what he's telling us is actually true. So this whole story may have just been concocted. It's trying to separate the fact from the fiction here, and he's concocted this story in order to possibly get us on his side, for us to feel for him, to feel sorry for him. But it leaves you with that. It's a very ambiguous ending. One that is often talked about now, and rightfully so. But Todd Phillips did it that way. He wanted to create it that way.
And that for me is I think it made the difference between me saying I like this film or I loved this film. Because when you've got other films that have that unreliable narrator, whether it be things like, say, Lost Highway, that's more surrealistic. But let's go for some more things like more classic examples like The Usual Suspects or Fight Club. You know, they are in your face with this really big twist. Oh, shocking outro. But Joker, it doesn't spoon feed you the unreliable. No. It gives you hints about it, but it doesn't hint you. The joke's on you.
It does it in a very restrained and subdued manner. And when I watched it for the first time, I was a little confused by the ending, but there was a part of me that did think, hang on a sec, has he invented this story here? Because the way it's presented towards the end, now everyone knows, comic fans and Batman fans would know that Bruce Wayne's parents were killed by Joe Chill, just a 2-bit thug.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in the 89 film, to create that personal edge, Tim Burton actually had Jack Napier, Jack Nicholson's Joker, kill him, to create that kind of personal thing between the two. In this movie, in a way, it's created by the Joker in a roundabout, inadverted manner. Because one of the thugs the Joker is clearly inspired, wearing a clown mask, is the one that kills Bruce's parents. And it's quite, very symbolic, in fact. There's the moment where Bruce Wayne's parents are actually killed lying there. That's when the Joker, Arthur Fleck, actually opens his eyes.
Oh, well, you mean after the car crash?
Yes.
Well, see, that's interesting.
It's almost, they're timed to the same point.
That makes sense, because
he dies and he awakens, opens his eyes.
That's a hell of symbolism to think of it on that one. The thing is, I think the whole thing with an unreliable narrator, though, is that we see that shot, I'm just thinking of a joke, and then you see the shot of Bruce Wayne with his dead parents, and then the question is, well, if he's just awoken, how did he have seen that?
Well, he wouldn't. That's the thing.
And there's the big question on how much of this is fabricated.
Is he trying to get credit for the creation of Batman? Is it the fact you brought this up before? Does he know who Batman is? Let's talk about the scene where he actually meets young Bruce outside Wayne Manor, and he actually puts a smile on the boy's face. I mean, that's kind of chilling, isn't it?
It's horrible. I mean, talk about stranger danger. It's like, as soon as they're introduced to each other, it's I can't believe I'm drawing this comparison. It's like it says, hi Georgie. It says, I'm Pennywise. It says, what's your name? I'm Bruce. I'm Arthur. Yeah. It's just the way he slowly just approaches the gay, and then it just puts the face on him, and just like Bruce Wayne's doing nothing, but he's so sucked into this little magic trick that Arthur is doing as well. Yeah. It's easily one of my favourite scenes. It has definitely one of the best moments of the score.
Yeah, I mean, I think this film has a lot of great scenes that are very memorable. Another scene that, again, kind of, to me, elicited a laugh, But also, if you think about it, it's a very disturbing thing. It's where he's dressed up as a clown in the hospital and he drops a gun.
Oh, I want to know.
But then he like puts his finger over it as if it's our little secret.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a joke, because he did say he was a proper part of his act. Is he lying about that, or is it actually a case of that was supposed to be a joke? I don't necessarily think. I think it was just part of the clumsiness. However,
clearly there's not. This is a movie that doesn't really have much humour in it. Of course, this is a very dark, downbeat film, if you will. But there are moments that I did laugh. The moment, for example, with one of the few people that he actually likes in the movie, or one of the few people that likes him, should I say, the short man,
Gary.
when he can't get out the apartment because he can't reach the lock.
And that did elicit a lot of people. I think the amount of times I saw it, that did elicit a lot of laughs from the audience as well. It's not laughing at the character; it's laughing at the how unfortunate. I think there are dark laughs in this film. Speaking of, there's one bit when he's talking to his girlfriend, if you like. Will you follow me today? Yeah, I thought that was you. I was hoping you'd come by and rob the place. I have a gun. I can come by tomorrow. Yeah. There are some bits in there which is like you shouldn't laugh at it, but you do.
And the bit where he walks into the wrong. It's an exit, and he tries going into the exit.
The exit only.
But the thing is, let's just quickly talk about the relationship that doesn't actually exist.
Do you think... Okay, so it is revealed that that doesn't exist, that it was all part of his imagination. Now, a lot of people have speculated that he kills her. What do you think? Let's hear your thoughts first.
On first viewing, I never thought that. On second viewing, I did, because there were police sirens in the background. We don't see any more of her. But again, it's very ambiguous. I actually thought to myself there was the possibility. It's left up to the audience's own interpretation, much like the ending. But it has been confirmed. Todd Phillips did confirm, no, she's not dead.
Well, yeah, in fact, if you read the screenplay, the idea is that during the incident that happens on the Murray Franklin show near the end of the film, it was going to cut to Sophie reacting and her daughter reacting to the shooting.
Yeah. Another uncomfortable scene is when Pogo's... Of course, let's just say that Pogo's, the name of the club here, is a great little kind of nod. I say a great little nod.
Perverse
It's a nod to John Wayne Gacy, the famous American serial killer. His clown alias was Pogo.
And to throw this in there as well, it was supposed to be set in 1981. Gacy was sentenced to death at this time. Todd Phillips' first film was a documentary on Gigi Allen and the Murder Junkies, who... the lead singer would eventually go to prison at some point, and one of his pen pals was in fact Gacy. Yeah. So there's a nice little bit of trivia for you all.
That scene was uncomfortable. Obviously, he's trying to do his stand up for the very first time, and he can't get his words out, and obviously keeps laughing. And the whole scene, like I said, he's really presented in a very sympathetic manner. Now, depending on how you interpret the ending. We don't actually know if this is the case. We don't know how much of this is true, if any of it is true. It's a killing joke.
Well, that's the thing. I do think it is a self-pitying story. I mean, if you compare it to real-life killers and their so-called backstory. In fact, there's a bit, I think, one of the greatest scenes in the film, on the Murray Franklin show. Murray goes, "There's so much self-pity, Arthur. You sound like you're making excuses for killing those young men." Which is another, I think, a great scene we need to talk about, I think, not just in the way that it's made, but some of the symbolism as well as some of the meaning behind it as well. Because when he goes on his rant... there's one bit where he goes about comedy is subjective, Murray. Isn't that what they say? The system that knows so much, you decide what's right or wrong, the same way that you decide what's funny or not. That's Todd Phillips. Yeah. I pointed this out to someone that, both him and Scott Silver wrote the screenplay. Now, he came out with something with why he made this film, and one of his reasons were as woke culture has killed comedy. Now, whether or not you think that's true or not, he clearly believes this because of how embittered that statement is. And to be honest, I think there is a hint of truth in that. However, it's just an incredible rant, though. And it is that final moment of where you finally get to see the Joker coming out, particularly because throughout the film, it's hinting towards the idea that he is suicidal, that he's going to end his life. When you consider that beautiful dancing on the stairs.
Or everything. He loses his job. right? He loses his job. Also,
constantly beaten up. Finds out that he was abused,
beaten up, abused. Also, there's one other thing. There's something else that happened. Yeah, the funding. They've cut the funding on therapy.
So, and he has no more medication as well. He's not able to proceed on as being a comedian. He was humiliated by a so-called idol.
It is literally just one thing after another for this guy. Society is failing him on so many levels. But let's just quickly say, let's just talk about, I mean, one of the images that's left with me is the scene in which you could say it's the birth of the Joker. Towards the end of the movie is where he actually creates the smile with his own blood.
Oh, it's a powerful scene. It's
very uncomfortable. It's the music that really accompanies that scene. It's a hell of a moment.
And it's the intensity, because as soon as he applies the smile, if you watch his eyes, he's tearing up. He's absolutely loving all this company as well.
Yeah.
And just a brief now, I know some people say, oh, it's a left-wing film, or it's a right-wing film. It's neither of those things. He's just a dangerous man who is wronged by society, and he's craving the attention. I mean, when he's crying, he's not crying because he's making a movement. He's crying because he's being noticed.
There's actually a moment shortly before that as well, where he's actually being taken in the car, and that's very much a nod to Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight.
Oh, when he's hit his head on the
pose. Yeah. He really does make this role his own in this film. Let's just quickly talk about the scene where he first gets kitted up as the Joker. The dance on the stairs, which has obviously become pretty damn famous already.
Yeah, so all these concerns of incitations of violence, and the biggest joke is it's all these people on, I think, either TikTok or all these social medias. It's just people dancing on the stairs or posing at the top of the Bronx stairs, and you just go, that's the biggest joke of 2019.
And obviously, we're not gonna go into the whole story behind this. Should have they have, or shouldn't they have? Of course, Gary Glitter song plays during that scene as well.
I can see the irony, and I can see why, considering this time, the Rock and Roll Part 2 was out around that time. I see a sense of irony in it. However, to have the film banned just because of that, come on, grow up.
It perfectly fit the scene. Obviously, we see him dyeing his hair and kitting out and that, and he looks pretty badass actually. There's one particular moment in the film where I think he does look really badass. It's where the whole kind of mob riots are going on. The big fight on the tube, and he's walking away, and as he's walking towards the camera, look how badass he looks.
It's the
he takes that cigarette, he throws that cigarette down, and he just looks maniacal.
There's so much to take away from that, because you've got all the cops running in one direction, you have a small smile, which slowly degrades into pure anger and resentment. It's a beautiful transformation, and again, with Hilda Gordonas's score as well. Oh God, that's the money shot you said when we watched it.
Yeah, I think overall, we could talk about this film for a lot longer, but we have to try and condense it. There's a lot more that we could talk about, but I think overall, I think it's safe to say that we both love this movie. We both really like. I think, to be honest, it's probably my favourite film of 2019. Now, admittedly, there are some apparently great films of last year that I haven't seen. But personally, it's probably my favourite movie of last year that I got to see.
Oh, I have no question about that. I know some people got really annoyed when it got nominated for 11 Oscars. And I said, so long as it wins the Oscars for Best Original Score and Acting, Best Actor in a Leading Role, I'll have no problems with that, because they were the 11 out of 10 things. So, Parasite was very, very good. Although, a beautiful irony, the mentor teaching the tutor. Martin Scorsese is the mentor, Todd Phillips being the tutor.
Yeah.
Todd Phillips' film wins Oscars. Martin Scorsese walks away empty-handed for The Irishman. There's a joke for you.
It overtook Dark Knight. Dark Knight was the previous record holder with 8 Oscar nominations for a comic book movie. You've now got 2 actors that have played the Joker and won Oscars.
And interestingly, so far, all live cinematic depictions, they've all won Oscars. You had art direction for the Tim Burton film, Hair and Makeup, which we talked about last time with the Suicide Squad. So it's nice to know that's carrying on the trend of, films with Joker seem to be Oscar worthy.
Yeah. So, with Joker, it's a film that, at the end of the day, I know some people are out there that I know I've got a couple of friends, for instance, who are like, I don't really want to watch this film, etc. It's not the joke. It's not the Joker to me. Mark Hamill's the Joker or Jack Nicholson's the Joker. That's fair enough if you want that. But with me personally, I'm always willing to take on board another depiction.
Yeah.
This is a character that's been around for 80 years, okay? There's going to be multiple iterations of that character. And I'm always willing to give any actor, director, the benefit of the doubt.
And Joaquin Phoenix, you get what you deserve, mate. Congratulations. And
he's a hell of an actor, and I know he's had his troubles in his personal life, Joaquin Phoenix. But yeah, you've got to say this: he's a hell of an actor. Another film that I really like him in, I think it's a film that doesn't get enough attention. It's called Her.
Yes.
With Scarlett Johansson that plays AI that he creates and ends up falling in love with. Good movie. And interestingly, I mean, this is his first comic book movie as well. I don't know if people out there know, but that Joaquin Phoenix actually turned down Doctor Strange, 2016 film, and also turned down, he was considered for Bruce Banner in the 2012 Avengers Assemble as well. Every
day's a learning day. I think it's fair to say we can draw the curtains on this fiasco of Carnage.
Yeah, we'll. I think that pretty much summarises it. I think The Joker's a great movie. I'm assuming everyone that has listened this far has seen the film because we have given a hell of a lot of spoilers there.
However, we do look forward to hearing to any and all opinions on this film. Thank you very much for tuning in for us.
Oh, and on one quick side note, now this is something, because obviously of the big success of this movie, there have been talks on and off of a potential sequel.
They need to carry it in the same line of the unreliable narrator.
I will be honest here, I don't want it. I don't actually want it. As much as I'd love to see Joaquin Phoenix again, and as much as I'd love to see him possibly expand on certain things, I don't want it. I don't want it, because to me, by bringing out a sequel, I can understand why they do it. It was a huge success. At the end of the day, money. Money.
It won't capitalise.
But it won't do as well. And at the end of the day, it runs the risk of tarnishing and ruining what the ending did for the first movie.
Yeah, I completely agree. The only way they could do it is if they maintained the unreliable narration element. But even then, that won't be enough.
Is it going to work second time round? No. Standalone film. Keep it a standalone film. I don't actually have any interest in a sequel to this movie. No. As much as I love Joaquin Phoenix. But yeah, I think that wraps up today's episode. So, stay happy. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me. And always remember, that's life.